Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation and inspirational letters from Danish. It was very interesting to prepare this presentation for this today conference, and it was interesting to see the different questions and strategies from all over the world. And I hope that in the last part of this today lecture series with Imre, we can speak a little bit about this region, the Balaton region, because tomorrow there will be a study trip through the Balaton Highland, which is a very special, which is in a very special transition now in an interesting urbanization process, and position and question of the vernacular heritage is in the forefront, that how is it reused and what is the future of the traditional land use. But in my presentation, I want to focus on the lake shore and the coast, on the recreational architecture, and I want to demonstrate how the vernacular architecture could inspire the recreation and the recreational architecture. It's a conflict zone on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's a very inspiring process through the 20th century, full of debates and questions and experiments, architectural experiments, how the modernization and local features can be worked together. This photo was taken in the Tihany Peninsula. It's in the middle of the Lake Balaton, and maybe you can see this conflict zone a little bit. You can see the ancient village with the vernacular heritage, which is highly protected, surrounded by newly built summer cottages and luxurious villas. And in the background, on the other shoreline, you can see the large modern hotels and cities, which shows an urbanized landscape. So this is a typical leisurescape, which is in transition with the nature and vernacular heritage. But the question is that how these different aspects can live together. We should take a distance to analyze the question, and for me, in my dissertation and in my research work, the question was, what is regional architecture? This concept appeared in a lot of papers and experiments during the 20th century with different connotations, so it's not easy to answer what is regionality, what is regional architecture in the Balaton case. For me, Balaton is a model where I can demonstrate these different aspects. So I think it's interesting to see that how this regional aspect can appear on different levels. For example, the global, the universal modernism, but on the global level, we can see how regional strategies from Western Europe could influence the Hungarian regional thinking. So it's also interesting how different landscapes can transit different values and methods. Then the national folk architecture, which is a larger abstraction than for example, than the Balaton Highland, and we can see that elements from Transylvania appear on the Balaton Highland, for example, which is not authentic. Then the regional abstraction, which is typical in the leisurescape, from Budapest people, the Balaton is one unit, and they cannot differentiate in between the northern and the southern part. And during the 20th century, a typical Balaton architecture developed, which is not differentiated in between the settlements. So it's also a larger abstraction than the local one, the local context, the vernacular context, which is about the local settlement heritage or the ancient values of the landscape. So now during my journey, I want to demonstrate these aspects, how it related to each other and what are the differences. A typical picture about the Balaton, the volcanic hills, Badacsony and the others. It looks like Balaton is a natural landscape, but if we make at the same point a 180-degree turn, we can see this, which shows that it's even more an urbanized landscape where the different architectural strategies and formations are in a mixture, and it's not easy to define what is the local identity of a Balaton settlement. And on the other shoreline, on the southern shoreline, you can see the same processes, the urbanization, and it's a very strange and newly emerging process. So for this presentation, very briefly, the questions: how vernacular architecture can inspire modern architecture in a leisure scape, what is the difference and what is the relationship between the levels of interpretation of modernity, regionality and locality, and what does this mean for interpretation and inspiration of vernacular heritage. I want to focus on the 20th century, and here you can see the development phases of the tourism, the recreational development of the region. The starting point is 1830. This is the Reform age in Hungary, when in Balatonfüred a local culture developed. But the main development phases started just after the 1848 revolution, after building the railway to Budapest. It was in 1860-61, and then in strong connection with the Hungarian history, different development phases appeared next to each other, and these are different social context and architectural strategies also. But if we speak about urbanized landscapes and the transition of the region, it's interesting to say that this part, the western part of Hungary, was part of the Roman Empire as Pannonia, and the Lake Balaton was in an interesting point because of the trade routes, and this network can be contemplated as a early urbanized landscape. And at this time, the Balaton Lake was used partly also for recreational purposes, but after the collapse of the Roman Empire, this recreational function disappeared, and just in the 1860 or 1830, 1860 appeared again. Here you can see an ancient map about the region. the interesting line is the railway, the southern railway on the southern lake shore, which is a symbol of the modernization and the transformation of the landscape. It's a very strong artificial line in the nature because it controls the water level and the ecological network of the region transform in an artificial way. And because of the railway building, first of all, on the southern shoreline, so the water level was lowered, and on the southern shoreline, a new zone appeared, and that was the basis for the new recreational settlements. It's very important to emphasize that these recreational settlements and parcellization was established on a newly artificially and newly built basis, not strongly connected to the ancient old peasant villages, but independently on the shoreline. If you contemplate these settlement patterns, you can see that these are orthogonal grid structures and very artificial, and it has strong influences on the architectural strategies and the question what is the relation with the traditional vernacular architecture. If we take a picture on this settlement, this is Balaton Coast, it's in the middle of the southern shoreline. You can see the differentiation in between the old traditional village and the newly settled recreational parcels. The old village is an organic structure and very narrow plots, and then the villas are in an orthogonal grid, autonomously settled, and this structure can reflect on the social differentiations also. So it was a conflict zone in the land use also, because first of all because of the shoreline. On the one hand it was part of the agricultural usage, and on the other hand for the basing culture. And very briefly about the architectural patterns, that was a new function in the region. There were no pre-use how to build on the Balaton Lakeshore for recreational purposes. The ancient Roman villas were destroyed, so there was not a existing continuity. And these typical villas from the 19th century or from the beginning of the 20th century reflects the Alpine resorts, the mountains with this wooden architecture. So it's not an organic answer for this question how to build on the Balaton Lakeshore, but it's a copy of the Alpine architecture. Maybe the travels and the memories from these western journeys can inspire this period of the summer cottages. And then in the middle of the 30s and in the 40s, a new type appeared on the Balaton, and it was in the background we can see that the new social layer started settle on the Balaton Lake, and it was a simpler one. And Ivan Kocsis, who was a key figure in the Hungarian architecture in between the two world wars, he was a university professor also. He defined a typical Balaton cottage, a typical Balaton house, and it's interesting to see that this is a general abstraction on the Balaton Lake, so it was not specialized for a city, for Balatonfüred or Keszthely or Balaton-Szemes. It's a general abstraction, Balaton cottage. You can see some models for different families, or this is a design competition for young architects defining Balaton cottages without a plot or without a location. It's a very abstract level. And after it, in this period, a lot of summer cottages were built following these types, and the general Balaton identity or Balaton quality appeared, which was not localized to different or special settlement, but on a general Balaton identity. For example, you can see here Balaton-Szemes Hunyadi settlement, where these houses were built during the 30s, following these type plans. If we contemplate or analyze Ivan Kocsis strategies, we can see the influence of the German Stuttgart school, but there were other strategies during the 30s where we can recover the inspiration of the folk architecture. Editorowsky Wigand was mentioned already today. Here we can see two villas in Csopak and in Balatonfüred. Both settlements are in the northern part of Balaton, and he wrote a book how to build on the Balaton lakeshore. You can see the cover of this book, and maybe you can see this. This is so this inspiration came from Transylvania, the Transylvanian architecture, and not from the Balaton Highland. For example, these projects can show the conflicts and the controversial attitude of this folk or national aspiration in the Balaton Highland, for example, and also in the works of István Medgyaszay, who was inspired by the Eastern architecture and tried to find a continuity in the Hungarian identity. And he used local materials. For example, this church was built in Balaton Almádi. Maybe Imre will talk also about this church. But it's interesting to see the local stone. This is very special on the northern part of Hungary, this red sandstone. I think tomorrow you will see a lot of examples. But other details are not specific in the Balaton Highland, but it's a mixture of different folk architectural elements from the War Carpathian Basin or from the Indian architecture. So it's very interesting conceptualization, but not specialized in the Balaton Highland architecture. And a tower from Jenő Padányi Gulyás, he was also mentioned today. You can see this viewpoint on the Csere head. It's very close to Balaton-Almádi. You can see the same red sandstone as a local material, but the details are also reflecting different inspirations, not just the Balaton Highland. And if we take a look from this viewpoint, you can see the context of this situation, which is an urbanized landscape. And then János Tóth, he is a very interesting personality from this age. He made a critique on this Balaton architecture and tried to find the inspiration from the Balaton Highlands. So he made researches on the Balaton Highland in the 30s and tried to define the specific architecture which can adapt to the recreational architecture also. So he tried to find the local inspiration for the recreational architecture, and Kálmán Tóth and this book series, which was written by the Friends of the Hungarian House movement. It shows the interest for the vernacular architecture from the touristic perspective. So at this time, the vernacular architecture was even more interesting for the tourism, and that was the first time to measure and examine the heritage on the Balaton Highland. But on the other hand, if we contemplate Kálmán Tóth's projects, we can see that he was a modern architect who was inspired by the vernacular architecture, and he wrote this book, the architecture of the people of the Balaton region, and it's interesting, this modern attitude, because he had a car and had a photo machine, a photo apparat, and from this modern attitude, or with this modern technology, could make the documentation about the vernacular heritage. And very briefly about the second part of the 20th century, it was a turning point in the regional strategy creation, because that was the first time in the 1958 when a regional plan was made. That was the first in the Hungarian planning history. And you can see, it's interesting that not just the shoreline, but the whole region was in one conceptual level as a unified region. And there was a huge examination, or there was a huge analysis about the regional features, and after it, this plan was made by Tibor Farkas. He was the chief architect of this project. But first of all, it was a development plan, and the Balaton Highland and the ancient villages remained in the background. So it's a critique to this project that it focused on the tourism and not on the vernacular heritage. The value of the project was that the different scale levels, the regional level, the settlement plans, and the local projects, the architectural concepts were put together in one methodology, and it was very effective. And the question of regional architecture appeared again, and Charles Polonyi, who was member of the Team 10 movement, he made very interesting flexible structures which could be adapted to the different locations along the Balaton shoreline, using the local materials and using the vernacular patterns, as Charles Polonyi mentioned in his presentation, that the inspiration came from the countryside and the crane wells and these structures, but it was not specialized in local context, but it's on a Balaton abstraction level and forced the regional identity and not the local identity. He demonstrated his plans on the Othello Congress. And this project got a prize, the Sir Patrick Abercrombie Prize, in 1965 from the UEA, and it reflects that this project was very new. The methodology was very new in the international planning history also. And a little bit we can see that how this project reflected on the vernacular heritage. For example, that was the first time when in Hungary the vernacular architecture was officially analyzed and protected. Maybe the perspective of the tourism was important, but in 1957 and 58, in two steps, the whole Balaton Highland was examined and protected. So it's an interesting project. And parallel with this, a new photo album was published, first of all in German and not in Hungarian for the foreigners, which demonstrated the vernacular heritage of the Balaton Highland and the settlements. Interesting is that the text was written by Gyula Ilyes. He's a famous writer in Hungary, and he described that how these different social layers can live together on the Balaton shoreline. And just very briefly, some projects from this time where the vernacular inspiration and the modernity was worked together. For example, these are communal buildings in the center of Tihany, and then some works of Kálmán Tóth in the 60s together with Ferenc Kallmaier, also in Tihany, which reused old agricultural functions. That was very new at this time. We are in the 60s, so in the middle of the modernity, and these architects tried to use the local patterns and local materials, and for example, here are projects from Badacsony. This is the volcanic hill with the vineyards. And then we should mention the early projects of Imre Makovec. For example, this restaurant in Balaton Szepes, which was not a successful project from the perspective of Imre Makovec. He mentioned that he was not satisfied because of the different context and background of this project, but maybe this is a very, very high level project from Imre Makovec, also in Balaton Szepes. This is a camping building, and it can shows already the inspiration not just the local architecture, but the anthroposophy and this spiritual context of his works. And then we can see the even intensive interest to the archetypical architecture in the summer cottages. The architects and the builders also tried to get inspiration from the local materials, reeds, stone, in a modern form. So a lot of experimental project was built at this time. In the end, I can close down with this postmodern turn in the 80s, which closed down the regional abstractation. This is the time of the ecological crisis, the modernization crisis, and the conceptual, the regional development was closed down, and the new projects was independently built projects on the Balaton shoreline. And you can see this project planned by Gábor Turányi in 1984. Maybe this is one of the first postmodern projects in Hungary, and he got the Eagle Award. This is the main Hungarian architectural award because of this building. He was very young at this time. You should see that this project focused on the local context and not on the general Balaton abstractation, and use the local patterns. You can see the influence of the international postmodern tendencies from Aldo Rossi and others, but this montage of the local patterns was very new in the Hungarian history at this time. So the time is over, so I want to close down my presentation. I hope that I could give you some example about the Balaton region, how these different scale levels and abstractation levels can work together and inspire each other. Thank you very much.